Joining us on the Goldberg New and Abraham Law Firm hotline, goldberg-law.com, is Mo Eggar of ESPN 1530 in Cincinnati, rocking it in Afternoon Drive, and also a part of Fox Sports Ohio. You can follow Mo on Twitter at Mo Eggar 1530. Mo, top of the morning to you. How are you and your friends and family holding up in Ohio?
We're doing okay. We're doing all right. You know, we're getting by. We miss baseball immensely, but we have the Bengals having the number one overall pick to look forward to. So in that regard, things are okay.
Mo, there has been a lot of talk, a lot of rumors. There always are. This is the lying season, as many people call it. But the fact of the matter is there is now talk that maybe the Dolphins are trying to court the Cincinnati Bengals to get the number one pick away from them. If that were to happen and Cincinnati trades the number one pick to Miami, what type of a revolt would there be in Southern Ohio?
It's a great question. People have suggested that we're going to have, civil disobedience and rioting in the streets if the entire economy collapses. That would pale in comparison to what would happen if the Bengals did anything but draft Joe Burrow. Fans have been locked into this for months. We've gotten so far down the line with this. I mean, for the last couple of months, really, you've been able to find people walking around in Joe Burrow Bengals jerseys, and he obviously hasn't even been drafted by them. He has been talked about in the present tense by Bengals fans for so long now that it feels like he's already on the team. I think if at the last minute they pulled the rug out from underneath people and did anything besides draft Joe Burrow, I think that the level of betrayal and frustration that people would feel, it would be the last straw. I mean, look, let's face it. This is the team that has put fans through the ringer. 30 years without winning a playoff game. Nobody went to Bengals games last year when they played that game in Week 16 against the Dolphins, which they almost came back and won. I've never seen people so happy to see the Bengals lose a game. So it would be the last straw for a lot of people, even if it made sense for them to do. I just think from an emotional standpoint, it would be, you would have a lot of people that viewed that as finally the opportunity to socially distance themselves from the Cincinnati Bengals.
Very nice. Very well played. See what you did there, Mo Eggar, 1530 ESPN. There's a reason that you are the guy in Afternoon Drive in Cincinnati to be able to work social distancing into an answer. How much of it, Mo, though, is Burrow the player and Burrow where he's from? Honestly, if he was from Minnesota, would there be the emotional attachment to him that there is?
No, of course not. It's certainly for a lot of fans a factor. I don't think it's, for most fans, the factor. I think if anything, the college football playoff puts players on a stage that even in the day and age of the BCS, we didn't have. Fans watched that game in the national semifinal against Oklahoma with rapt attention that they ordinarily might not have cared that much about. Same for the national title game against Clemson. If you go back to the day of the college football playoff semifinals, Ohio State was in one of those games, and yet here in Ohio there was more attention being paid to what Joe Burrow was doing against Oklahoma. So the fact that he played so well in games that here so many people saw, this isn't like, he succeeded on some stage unseen. He did it on the biggest stage in college football. Everybody paid attention to it. It certainly does help that he's, from Ohio. But I think if anything, it's the exasperation with watching what the Bengals have tried to do at quarterback over the last couple of years. It's the understanding that when you have the number one overall pick, and there's a quarterback like Joe Burrow there, this is not a chance you might get down the road. But, yeah, I think we'd all be kidding ourselves if we didn't acknowledge the fact that he's, a guy who's from about 2.5 hours from Cincinnati. That factor But for a lot of people, it is obviously, clearly a part of why folks are so excited about him coming to Cincinnati.
Okay, so Burrow has not helped this situation. I mean, he has said he'll play for whoever drafts him, but he's liking tweets or Instagram posts from the Dolphins. I mean, he has played this. I believe, Mo, and I'm curious to your thoughts, I think Joe Burrow has played this as well as anyone has in the Twitter, social media era of being reasonably cryptic, but still answering things mostly the right way. I mean, Joe Burrow has been as big a part of this problem as anybody, and he's getting really none of the grief for it, is he?
No, he's not. Look, I mean, the liking the tweet about the Dolphins on social media, I can't explain that. The rest of it, though, he has been non-committal and he has been cryptic without saying anything controversial. And what's happened? I think you've had two things. Number one, I think you have folks who are bending over backwards to read between the lines and put his mouth that aren't there. He's not going to say, I want to play for the Bengals. He's not going to do that because in the off chance that he were to end up elsewhere, he's got to go back and revisit those words. He's not going to put himself in a corner. But the other part of this is I think it's very easy to look at the Cincinnati Bengals and go, why would somebody want to play there? Let's not kid ourselves. If we didn't have a draft and Joe Burrow could pick wherever he was going to play, chances are he's not coming to Cincinnati. I mean, if you're one of the best employee prospects coming out of college, you're not going to go pick the worst company to work for. So the basis of all of this speculation about whether Joe Burrow would pull an Eli or pull an Elway and tell the Bengals that he didn't want to come here, that's based on decades of ineptitude. That's based on 30 years without winning a postseason game. That's based on being a franchise that nobody associates with doing everything it possibly can to win, with being conservative, with being, I think, to a degree, unfairly labeled as cheap. All of this is rooted in the failures of the Cincinnati Bengals. And so, I've said for a couple of months here, it's now going to be on the Bengals not to convince Joe Burrow to want to come here if he's drafted. He doesn't get a choice. It's on the Bengals to win while they have him, or else Joe Burrow in a couple of years will do what so many other players have done before him, and that's count down the days until they can leave. So I think he's played this well. I think he has been non-committal. I think he, put out some fires at the combine when, he had an opportunity to say, I don't want to come to Cincinnati, and he said, I'll go wherever I'm drafted. But if they continue to do what they've done for the better part of their entire franchise existence, and that's kind of be behind the times, conservative, not go overboard to try to improve their roster, not surround Joe Burrow with what he needs to succeed, not give Joe Burrow a chance to have the kind of success that has eluded so many players here, he's going to tell them to take a hike, or he's going to take a hike when he has the first opportunity to do so.
Do you think the Bengals are legitimately entertaining the Dolphins' best offer? Or do you think, quite frankly, that the Bengals are like, they know the NFL would get mad at them, but they're like, listen, can we just get this over with? Because if I was the Bengals, Mo, quite frankly, I'd already have him signed, and I would have already traded Andy Dalton. I believe you get more for Dalton. Well, I believe you get more for Dalton before the draft. That I don't think you get more for Dalton after the draft. I don't think, and we're not going to have workouts. I mean, the odds of somebody getting hurt much before Labor Day are going to be even slimmer this year, I think, than in past years. If the Bengals are holding out for value for Dalton, I think you get it now as opposed to after the draft. I would already move forward if I'm the Bengals, but do you think there's a snowball's chance that if the Dolphins say 3 number ones and a future pick, yes or no, that they would say yes?
When I was 16 years old, I asked Stephanie Dye to the junior prom, and she said she would think about it and tell me the next day. And the next day she told me no. I thought for those 12 hours she was literally considering it. I'm sure the Bengals are kind of giving them the same treatment. Yeah, we'll kick it around. We'll think about it. The answer is going to be no. I mean, whether or not it should be is a good question because they were 2-14 last year. They have a lot of holes as a 2-14 does, but I would be floored. I would be stunned beyond belief if on April the 23rd we have any result other than Joe Burrow being drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm sure they're listening to any and all offers, and I'm sure they're kicking it around amongst themselves. But somebody said to me when this process started, this is the only time that if you're a Bengals fan and you want them to take Joe Burrow, this is the only time that you're going to be happy that the team owner is Mike Brown, because Mike Brown loves two things, quarterbacks and cheap labor. And Joe Burrow is a quarterback who they don't have to pay a whole lot of money. In terms of the Andy Dalton thing, they've kind of screwed this up because of the timing. You know, there are off seasons where I think a lot of teams would have liked to have had Andy Dalton. You only have to make a 1-year commitment. Comparatively speaking, he doesn't make a ton of money. He's had a good career. He's had success. But in an off season where you could also take a whack at Teddy Bridgewater and Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers and maybe Jameis Winston or Cam Newton, Andy is a little bit less appealing. I tend to think that what's going to happen is they're just going to have to cut him loose and not get anything for him. Maybe Jacksonville gives them something, but they're not going to get that much for him. And I certainly don't think they're going to bring him back to be Joe Burrow's backup for the kind of money he's going to be making. So the timing has not played in their favor. They really should have traded him at the trade deadline last year, which is when they benched him. And instead, they kept him around, brought him back at the end of the year, gave him a chance for a swan song, and now they're, for lack of a better way of putting it, stuck with him. But, again, getting back to the original question, I think I certainly don't think the Bengals are going to announce before the 23rd that Joe Burrow is going to be the guy, but Joe Burrow is going to be the guy. And again, if we had any other result on the 23rd, I would be stunned.
Whatever became of Stephanie?
I ran into her at a restaurant about 2 years ago. And the guy she was with was like 350 pounds. So now I'm really upset.
Mo Eggar of ESPN 1530.
I'm not 350 pounds, by the way. So just for the record. I have a lot going for me, but I'm not 350 bills yet.
But
ask me after quarantine, I might be.
I can tell because, for our Twitch and YouTube, we put a graphic up of who our guest is. And, Mo, I'm not going to lie. You know the headshot I've got of you probably because it's the first one that comes up. You don't always look happy.
Wasn't happy that day either.
Mo Eggar, Afternoon Drives, ESPN 1530 in Cincinnati, also part of Fox Sports Ohio. Follow him on Twitter at Mo Eggar 1530. Mo, thanks so much for your time, and hopefully you'll agree to do this again after the draft.
Anytime. Look forward to it. Thank you.